Hi there, this is Patricia from patriciafenty.com, and today I'm going to show you how you can do this really beautiful and inspiring painting using dot painting, and I'm doing it on a canvas board. You could do it on a cardstock or mixed media paper if you like, and it's a combination of a background painted in an abstract finish in a yellow and white tone, and then we'll do dot painting in a combination of blues and purples. And so this is super fun and really easy to do, so let's get started. Now the supplies you will need for this project is some type of a paint surface. So you could use the watercolor cards, you could use mixed media art paper, and just a reminder, if you do use a paper surface, you want to do a layer of gesso or white paint on the back side of your paper surface to balance the tension of the painted surface on the top, and that will prevent your paper from curling. And I'm going to be using a canvas board, and I have this board here that I'll be using, and I have painted on this board previously, so I just put a couple of layers of gesso to cover the previous surface. And then you can either free form your lettering for the dotting that we're going to do. I happen to have these little stencils, so I'm going to use them to outline the lettering. Then, of course, you'll need some dotting tools, and I'm using the DIY Mandala dotting tools. I'll be using the smaller sizes, so I'll put a link to that below. But I will put a link to a beginner dot painting video below that shows you how you can use dotting tools that you can find around the house. And then for me, the background, I'm going to be painting it in tones of yellows and white. So I have the Americana in saffron yellow. This folk art is moon yellow and cadmium yellow, and then I'll just be using some white. I just have the Golden Brand titanium white. And then once I have the background all painted, then I'm going to be dotting the lettering with a selection of purples and blues. So I have lavender and a primary blue. This is a bit dark, so I'll add a bit of white to that, and ocean blue, and the desert turquoise, and then Bahama blue. So those are the colors I'll be using. And so for painting the background, I'm just going to be using a sponge. I might use some of this drawer liner to put a bit of texture on there. I have a couple different types, and this is one of those protection covers for the Asian pears. I have a toothbrush here, and that's really good for making little spackles. And I just have a regular foam brush too. So any tools just to sort of create a textured background. And then of course you can have a paint tray for your dotting and a damp rag and some water, and that's it. So I decided to not use the moon yellow because it's very close in color to the saffron yellow. So I'm just using the two yellows and the white. And so painting a background, you can do this in any way that you like. There really are no rules, so I'm just going to start just getting some paint on the surface using the foam brush, and just, brushing it on in no particular way, and just kind of blending those two colors together. And I'm going to get the sponge a little bit wet and pick up some of the cadmium yellow and just start dabbing that on as well. And you could use a crumpled up saran wrap for this, and that creates a nice texture. So here I'm adding a bit of white, and just I'm just looking for just a really basic texture here for a background color. There's some more cadmium yellow, a little more of the saffron yellow. The one thing is that you don't want to have the background color too bright. So here I would add more white to soften it so that you have a good contrast between your dotting colors and your background color. And see how I've blended that in so the yellow isn't so bold. And so, and then you can use, here I'm gonna just take the toothbrush and just do a bit of spackling on here and spackle it on like that. Oh, I like that. That's a really simple way to get some texture on the surface. That's kind of fun. I like that. And then, you know, that went really quickly, and I must say I quite like it just the way it is. So I'm going to let that dry and I'll come back. Maybe I'll do more, maybe I won't. Welcome back. So I decided to keep that background. I was very happy. It was super simple to do. So, you know, sometimes simple is just the best way to go. So now what I've done is I've used my stenciled letters here to draw the outline of the word be kind. And so I just placed that on the background and I traced around it in pencil and just a little bit bigger than what the letter is, because you want the lettering to be nice and plump, so you've got lots of room to paint into. And I did my letters sort of offset a bit. I didn't want them in a perfect straight line. And in my DIY dotting tools, I'm using number 10 and smaller, because what I did was I measured sort of the width of the letters, and I'm making the dots like half the width. See, the dot will be bigger than your number 10 size, so you want your tool to be, you know, like no bigger than half the size of the width of your letter, if that makes sense. So number 10 is the biggest that I would use, and then I'll use smaller sizes as well. So I have all my paints out on the tray, and then this was my primary blue, and I mixed it with some white just to get another lighter shade of blue. And don't be afraid to play with colors and mix them up a bit to create new colors. Color mixing can be a lot of fun. So now we are just going to start with the biggest tool, and I'm starting with the lavender. And I ended up using the number 10 tool. And again, check out my beginner's dotting tutorial for techniques and tools that you can use. I'm not teaching that in this tutorial. And so here I'm just going into all the letters with the lavender with the largest size tool. And then I will, once I've done that, I'll go back and put large dots with all the other colors and just fill it in sort of sporadically. And you can see here I'm using the teal. And so just go ahead and dot all the big dots with all the colors that you have. All right, so you can see where I've put in all the different colors. I'm not using white. I'm just using all the colors. And now I'm going down to a number 7 or an 8. And so I'm going to use the 7. And then you're just going to go through and repeat the same process, filling in with the smaller dots in between the bigger dots. And just mixing up the colors and sort of lining some of these dots up with the outside edge of your letters and in between, and just starting to create a shape of the letters. So go ahead with this size tool and use all your colors just as before. All right, so I finished up with the number 7 dotting tool. Now I'm going down to a number 5, and again just repeat the same process, filling in the space of the letters with the smaller dots and all the different color paints. Then we are going to be layering on top of these dots too. So on the big dots we'll be putting a couple of more layers. So these may not be your final colors on your bigger dots, because you'll be layering different colors. So go ahead and use the smaller tool to again fill in all the spaces, and we'll come back and do another layer. Okay, so you can see how the words are starting to take shape. So now I'm going down to the 4, 3, 2, 1 dotting tools, and these are the really fine ones. So I'm just going to use these kind of randomly, and then you'll be using the finest tool to just sort of go around the very outside. I'll show you that as well. That will define the word really well. So we'll just start with the number 4 here. And already I'm needing pretty small dots, and I'm seeing that the 4 is actually too big. So I will go to the number 3 instead. And then just start to fill in the little spaces in between the bigger dots with the fine dots, and making sure to keep your hands out of the paint. So go ahead and use the really fine tool in all your colors to fill in between the spaces. Okay, so it's coming along here. And so now I am using the number 1, the finest tool. And I'm just going to do a bit of an outline and use all the colors, but more of the darker colors, because I really want to define the outline of the lettering. And this is where you can walk the dots. If I teach that in the beginner dot painting tutorial, where you just sort of run the dots. You take one load of paint and you run the dots along, and they get a little smaller as they go. And you can just go into all these little tiny spaces. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but when you're working on your painting, you'll see what I mean. So go ahead with a really fine tool and just fill in any space that is showing as best as you can. And then we'll come back and we'll start layering the dots in the bigger dots. Great. So I'm getting a little cross-eyed here, but you can see where I filled in with all the fine dots and how much that defines it. And you can go back a little later. You might have to take an eye break. And so now, making sure this layer is completely dry, we're going to do another layer of smaller dots. So I'm using a number 6. So my big dots were number 10. So now I'm down to a number 6, and using a complementary color. So in the purple dot, I'm dropping a teal, and there, and the paints need to contrast enough to see the dot on top of the darker color. And so here I'm taking the purple dot and I'm going inside the dark teal, the desert turquoise, and this will look good on top of the Bahama blue as well. And oh no, that's the desert turquoise there, and that's not enough contrast. The other color must have been that blue-white mix that I made. So here I'll drop the purple on the teal, and you see how good that looks. So you want there to be enough contrast. So I put some light blue on the desert turquoise, and that works good. And there we go. So go around and put another layer of dots into the center of all the big dots. And, oh, here, I'll turn it right side up. And yeah, so go ahead and do that, and I will see you when that's done. Okay, so you can see here how I've done that layer there, and making sure that this layer is completely dry. We'll do one more layer, doing smaller dots inside these big dots, and also the medium-sized dots. So the medium-sized dots will have 2 layers of dots, and the big dots will have 3 layers of dots. And so just going into the top, and did I say I'm using a number 3 tool? But you know, you can play around and use any size you like, just making sure it's a smaller dot. And so I'm using the purple here, and there won't be a lot to fill in here. You'll kind of have to, you know, look around. I'll put some purple there and some there. And there I'm putting it in size, the medium size dot with the purple. And that's a big size dot, the third layer. And so at this point, this is a bit of a fine work, but it does make quite a difference in the end. So the other thing I have decided to do is I'm thinking and dotting at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a heart here, just a little freeform heart, and dot it in the exact same way that I did the letters, just to fill in that space. You can do that if you like, or you could just leave it like this, but I'm going to draw a little heart and dot in there as well. All right, so I've drawn my freeform heart, and I'm just going to be dropping the dots in the exact same way, starting with the larger tool and using all the different colors, and then dropping down in size with the tools. And of course, you could make any kind of shape that you like. You could, you know, do a flower or whatever you like. So I'm going to go ahead with this, and I'll show you how it looks when it's all done. All right, so you can see how that's coming along. And right here, I just wanted to show you, I put the side of my hand and I smeared my dots a little bit. So in this case, it's not too bad. So I'm just going to let it dry, and then I'll dot over top of that. And then I'll do my second and third layer of dots like I did here. And it'll look all the same. All right, so here we go, it's all done. So you can see how in some of the dots I did the 3 layers, and in some of them I did 2 layers. And so letting this dry really, really well, you can then erase your pencil lines. And then also I have a few little splatters of the darker colored paints. And so you could just take some white paint or yellow paint and just touch that up. And I'm going to make a little bit of a design here just to add to the texture. And I have a little bit down at the bottom here, and just touching it up. And of course, you can go back after you rest your eyes and fill in some more. My eyes are totally crossed, but I think that looks so pretty. And I'm really happy with how that turned out. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more creative and inspiring videos. Thank you for joining me.